Good morning. Very glad to be here in Madrid. I'm Alolita Sharma, representing Wikimedia Foundation, and I'm the Director of Language Engineering for our internationalization and localization engineering projects, and very glad to be able to join the W3C workshop today in Madrid. I think I'll be brief, and I want to deliberately stay high level because I want to give you the breadth of Wikipedia's contact with users and their contributions, as you know. Again, I like to ask this question, but I'm sure it would be amusing. I'm sure all of you use Wikipedia. How many of you read it? Everyone, I hope. And how many of you edit it? Hey, that's good. Some folks, at least 30% I can see, so that's very good. I think that that's an indicator of what Wikipedia is today, where it stands, how integrally it has actually transformed into being a resource in multilingual content on the web. And want to talk to you a little bit about the scale of Wikipedia. What are we talking about? You know, what is all this generation of user content that is happening on the web today? And as we go into the mobile world, how does that look for us going into the future? So Wikipedia today has about 31.5 million articles in different languages, and we cover 287 languages. So just to have live user-contributed, user-generated content in 287 languages is pretty phenomenal. This is, Wikipedia really represents the diversity on the multilingual web, and is, you could say, a trendsetter in the kind of energy that users have in contributing content on the web, sharing as volunteers. And out of that, let me go a little bit further down into some details. Out of 31.5 million articles, we have 4.5 million in English. English happens to be the largest language on the web today, and we'd like to see it change. Obviously, we'd like to see all other languages actually have just as much content. But the close four, which are 1.5 million plus articles, are, of course, the European languages, German, Dutch, French, and Swedish. And then close to above 1 million articles, between 1 million and 1.5 million articles are Italian, Spanish, Polish, and Russian. So Spanish actually hit 1 million articles last year. That was very exciting. And we're really happy that, you know, with the kind of energy that there is in the EU about multilingual languages, the consciousness that exists, it really helps reinforce the message that multilingual web is a reality and needs to be everywhere. If we were only looking at English content and mainly coming out of the United States, perhaps we would only be speaking English on the web. But it gets more interesting as we look at 287 languages and we look at the breakdown of the participation and contributions coming in other articles and other languages. So you see that there is amongst the top 10, you're seeing that there are 1 million plus. That shows very healthy user-generated content happening, you know, contributions coming online, and then look at what happens. So you have anything from 100,000 articles to 1 million articles in 43 languages. It drops precipitously, and then you have 73 languages, which are 10,000 articles to less than 100,000. 73. So look at how the numbers change. And then you have 1,000 articles in Wikipedias, in different language Wikipedias for 101 languages. So you immediately see that, yes, people are interested in having content in different languages and different scripts on the web, but the numbers are dramatically different. And then you even have 61 very passionate communities of languages actually having even 100 articles to 1,000 articles. So you see the incubation and the inception of new languages showing up on the web for the first time, but they're so small. 1,000 compared to 4.5 million. That's quite a stark contrast. And that's something to be noted. So when you say 287 languages, it's a very nice number to talk about, but the demographics in terms of the contributions that are happening in the content community is imbalanced. And how do we change that? That's what the W3C Multilingual Web Committee is looking at. That's what we are looking at in terms of the tools and engineering that we can develop, as well as some of the programs that we can have to help users be able to easily contribute content on the web. I just wanted to offset that with 3 numbers, which are recent as of this week. And that means that we have actually 500 million users, unique users, using Wikipedia every month. That's significant. It's very significant. There's 500 million users, unique users, actually reading, consuming, contributing to Wikipedia every month. And out of that, 21 billion page views. So 21 billion pages are being read. And from that, 4.8 billion is mobile. So even 6 months ago, mobile was 4 billion, 3.8 billion. And we see this dramatic jump that as we go month after month, it changes dramatically, where we see that shift in terms of the consumption of content on the web going into the mobile web. And that's a very important trend to note, because it has a deep impact on how user contributions come in with content from mobile, tablets, and mobile platforms as we go into the future, and how they change the shift from a traditional web browser on the desktop to the mobile platforms that we have. So again, this gives you an idea of the scale. I want to show you another couple of graphs on the trends. That is, where do we see the growth occurring in terms of contributions, in terms of consumption of content, because that drives, to a large extent, where the languages and the language technologies will develop and support those languages. So you can see overall, the world is consuming 500 million pages a month, and you have 500 million users, sorry. You see Europe being on top in terms of consumption. Europeans consume Wikipedia content the most, which is thank you. Again, it's good, and I'm glad that everyone contributes. And it's 202 million. Then you see Asia Pacific. So is China, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, consuming 119 million users every month. And then, of course, you have the United States and Canada, which is almost 100 million, 96.2 million. So you're seeing that these are the 3 largest geographies, if you will, where people are reading and consuming Wikipedia data a lot. And then the demographics become kind of interesting, because you also have to keep in mind what the growth pattern is. So if you look at North America, for example, you see that the line is steady, if not going down. That is, in terms of consumption of content, or contribution for that matter. Whereas in geography like India, where you have 28 million readers coming in, from there it's a steady curve upwards. You could see that Latin America, which is indicated in yellow, here also having a steady, choppy, but steady stream upwards. So you kind of see in terms of consumption of content that as people get broadband access, as people get devices which are cheap in their hands and have mobile connectivity everywhere, that changes the dynamics of consumption of content and hence creation of content worldwide. China is an exception, unfortunately, because China only has 8 million users in our universe, and that's because we are blocked heavily by China. There are local competitors in Chinese content, and we are accessible from Hong Kong and Taiwan and different Shanghai, for example, but not in general, right? And we'd love to see it change. But that is kind of underrepresented, majorly because, given the kind of broadband that exists in different metros in China, as well as the demographics of users consuming content, there could be a change dramatically if China actually allowed consumption of content openly on the web. So that's just a snapshot of visitors. Another graph I just wanted to share with you is, again, a breakdown of what's happening on mobile, right? And how is user content being consumed on mobile. So for us, English, of course, is a majority of the consumption of mobile on mobile content. And then we see dramatically a change. Japanese shows up as the second largest consumer of content, which is very interesting because it is directly correlated to the density and provision of broadband and internet access on mobile directly. It really is. I mean, I was in Tokyo a few months ago, and I could see even on the train, there were people had at least 4 devices connected to the internet with them. They were taking phone calls on one phone, they were watching television on the other phone, they had tablets, and it was the same in Hong Kong, and which was just amazing because that correlates to the kind of consumption of content that you're seeing coming from that geography. Very small number of users, but very heavy utilization of content on the web. And then, of course, you have German as a major consumer of content, people reading. You have Spanish. Spanish is third, actually, very heavy consumption, which is actually pretty pleasant to see. And you have Russian. We see an enormous growth in Russian content and consumption on mobile, which is directly related, again, to people more actively participating in generating content as well as consuming it. And then, of course, Italian, French taking the lead. But you see, in general, it's just that it's continually increasing, right? And that's a trend to note because that shows that this is the platform of consumption where the language technologies and the standards need to support and be. All right, so I just wanted to give you a very small snapshot. Again, don't want to dig a lot into this, but these are raw numbers. We do post them publicly. You're welcome to go and see them any point in time. They are actually live numbers. You can see that English has 4.5 million articles, Dutch is second, German is third, Swedish, French, Italian, Russian, Spanish, and Polish. These are our top 10 contributors. And similarly, after that, we go in, the landscape becomes far more interesting, becomes variant, it's non-Latin, some languages coming in from the rest of the world, which are non-Latin based, starting to generate content. You see Japanese being number 11, and then you have Chinese being number 15, with almost 766,000 articles. Again, Chinese is in complexity for us. We actually don't distinguish across the variants. We'd like to, but we don't have that capability yet. But again, the content is different enough in the different variants of Chinese that it would actually be nicer to break that down into the different variants. And then you have Ukrainian, Catalan. Catalan is 17, which is quite amazing. I mean, and this shows you, again, some of the user interactions where you have smaller languages in Europe with very passionate communities contributing and making an web presence of content, sharing content in their language with everyone. Then you have Bokmo, Farsi, Indonesian, Arabic, Korean. So you're seeing many of the non-Latin languages gradually come into the top 25. Again, I'm happy to share the link with you later if you're interested. You can always go and check our statistics on what's happening on Wikipedia at stats.wikimedia.org. That's where you can always find statistics. So I want to talk a little bit about our users and who really are our users in terms of different language groups. And that means that, I mean, I look at them as three categories in you know, if you were to break down, okay, these are our language users, these are our language contributors, these are the folks who are consuming web content. You'd say that the early adopters, who are always first to the gate, are the European communities, firstly. They're large languages, and have large enough numbers on the web to be able to contribute a lot of information and a lot of content. And that's what I call the early adopters. They've been there, first at the gate, and been doing this and have enough critical mass. So they're not in danger of you know, not stopping to contribute content. They really have a lot of content. And then there's the next generation. This is a new generation that is coming in onto the web. First time broadband access, first time mobile devices, never had a lot of laptops, never had a lot of computing capabilities. The rest of Asia, the rest of Latin America, Africa, and even parts of Northern Asia. And those are, for example, the Indic languages. India is, and you can see that in the growth trends that we see in the numbers, where it's directly related to mobile and to broadband accessibility. You have the growth in Indic languages. In content, you have the right to left languages. Arabic has shown up on our top 25, which is very interesting because that means that right-to-left languages are actually picking up reasonable critical mass. Farsi, you saw Persian also showing up there. And then, of course, the CJK languages. There's a lot of content in certain, in Japanese or in Chinese or Korean. But again, showing up as encyclopedic knowledge on Wikipedia is a very positive trend. That means that there is a lot more user interaction, much more than used to be 5 years ago or 3 years ago. And then, of course, you have the third category of what I call the long-tail languages, which are those tiny languages that you saw 101 of, or 73 languages in 10,000 pages of articles, which have very tiny but passionate communities and are starting with little content, but are very passionate and want to make sure that this happens. And Catalan is actually one of those communities, because you see that energy in terms of being able to make that content available online and sharing it. So a couple of interesting languages are Navari. This is a language based on Devanagari in Hindi from Nepal. And in fact, this is the second largest Indic Wikipedia now after Hindi. So that says something, again, and this has happened just in the last year. So you see the growth of content coming in from these long-tail, passionate communities, which really, really is another catalyst to drive content contributions. So, just talking a little bit about content, you know, how do we grow more content contribution? Because technology is to serve the users who want to share and contribute knowledge, right? So content has to grow fundamentally at this, you know, is gated by the pace of the delivery of the platform, the availability of the platform. It has, and the access of content has to be free and pervasive to a certain extent, maybe to all extents, in order to facilitate emerging content and new content coming online. If it is all paid for content, probably not grow at the same pace as it was free. Wikipedia would have never become Wikipedia if it had been a paid for service. You would have never even talked about it as, hey, can I go and look up a word? And Wikipedia comes up and says that information to you. The virtuous cycle of contributions, driving that in terms of having individual users create information, share information, and at the same time organizations also helping that, so it's top down and bottom up. I haven't seen content contributions just occurring bottom up in new languages. It is something that, again, needs a fair bit of bootstrapping in order to get to the point where you have critical mass to be able to create a significant amount of serious content. Then you have rich tools and language assets. I'll be talking a little bit about that a bit later. And the tablet. I do see the tablet as being the platform of primary consumption going into the next 5 years, because that's the trend I see in Asia, and that's the trend I see in Latin America, and that's the trend I see in the rest of the world beyond Northern Europe, and the United States, because that's where the growth is. So again, thinking about that and keeping that in mind, it is really important to focus in and drive that. And then, of course, the creation of many web applications to drive the creation and growth of content. So it's a cycle, as you know. What are the challenges? We still have lots of challenges, obviously. There are technical challenges. We just don't have enough internationalization and localization support yet. We don't have every browser speaking every language on the planet or handling every language script yet, natively or out of the box. We don't have our mobile OSs still, Android, Firefox OS, other OSs speaking languages out of the box. So there is a lot of inadequacy in the language tools for web and mobile. Fundamentally, the user experience for multilingual users is second class beyond Latin languages. It is still not taken for granted that you could access any language and read any language content out of the box for every browser and every device. And also, there is a serious paucity, if you will, of high quality content and the lack of reference data. And I bring back your attention to those two aspects because those are connected to some of the topics we'll be covering at the conference here and the workshop here in the next couple of days. And it is actually very important to look at that carefully, because we may all wish for high quality content to be created, but how do you incentivize and motivate that happening out of the box from the platform itself? And at the same time also make available the data repositories for suggestions, all the way from simple basic dictionaries to specialized corpus of knowledge in different languages, and make that tie in to have suggestions for people to be able to use, consume, and share. Okay, so what is Wikipedia doing? We're talking about all this, we're thinking about it, we're looking at it, we're seeing multilingual users come online. We're doing quite a lot for the kind of, for the small size of engineering that we have, but a massive impact, as you know. We have been looking fundamentally at some of these areas which you will find interesting and relate to some of the work that you're doing. And above and beyond this, we are starting to provide all our data in HTML format. So that's something which is very, very important, because traditionally we have handled Wikitext and XML, and now we are moving towards HTML for all our data. So that's something which is very important. But we are looking at language selection. We are looking at web fonts, because we see that as a major blocker for being able to have all languages being read and consumed on a browser equally. We actually push web fonts when we see tofu on the page for certain languages, and we have web fonts for 63 languages with 81 variants. We have input tools that we have been collecting and releasing. These are all open source, so you can actually reuse them. You can use them on a university website. You can use them for a website that you run or contribute to. You can actually reuse all this in a content and these tools. 139 input methods for 64 languages, and on-screen key maps as we start to look at mobile a bit more carefully and support it better. Internationalization support, we are one of the few set of websites on the planet that actually supports grammar, plurals, and gender for internationalization. Most websites don't, still on the web. Content, and then, of course, I'll come back to content translation, but software UI and message localization. We, again, leverage tools and build platforms to be able to scale for 287 languages. We would not be able to do this manually if we were looking at it. And we have a translation platform with side-by-side proofreading and translation aid, which is very helpful for crowdsourced, volunteer-driven contributions that are coming in for UI and message localization. We also have a platform which is translatewiki.net, which is our web-based platform where our volunteer contributors actually come and provide multilingual data for localization of our UIs. And then a very interesting project that we're starting to actually think about and look at and start building the first baby steps in it. And that's content translation. It's, as many of you know, and I'm looking forward to some of the talks coming up later, there are several components to content translation. It's a difficult area because there aren't enough tools which are available to support languages beyond maybe the top 5 languages. And we need to have good machine translation software. We need to have good translation memories, dictionaries, glossaries, terminology, corpuses, and lots of different sources of data to be able to support content translation. Now, in our world, what we are thinking is that we could help some of the smaller language communities and language content, Wikipedias, if you will, by being able to provide the ability to bootstrap new content using tools in content translation and having the ability to say, take an well-established, well-written article in English or German or Spanish to other languages with a suggested translation, but then editors actually editing that suggestion to be able to finally publish and generate new content. And why I say that is because today the way people contribute content, edit, and create new content is a very difficult process. They try to collect, cobble tools together wherever they find them. Maybe it's Google Translate where they translate some words, or they're looking at a dictionary. They could be even looking at a paper dictionary, but it's all over the place. When somebody's doing a translation, there's no, unified set of tools that you could actually go and use to be able to even take content across European languages. I mean, and the problem becomes a lot harder the moment you step out of European languages and start doing Japanese or even Korean or Indic languages. There's just no data. It's just amazing. And this is 2014. So it's just astonishing. So where are we headed? Wikipedia turns 14, and it is definitely, in this century, the most significant open content platform. It continues to set the trend for where the users are contributing and how content is being consumed. It is one of those wind vanes weather barometers that tells us that this is where the users are going with content. And what are we trying to do here? We are the content commons for the web. We do intend to generate and facilitate the generation of rich, high-quality user content, delivering first-class multilingual user experience, very important, because all the work that we are doing in HTML and CSS helps us do that. Engaging a new generation of users, how users interacted with the web even 20 years ago or 10 years ago is different from how we interact with the web today. Being mobile and being everywhere, which means offline also. commoditizing language software. I fundamentally believe that every piece of language software has to be open and available and free. And this has to happen because otherwise you really cannot bootstrap language content on the web. You cannot have everything available digitally. It has to be commoditized. It's almost as if you don't think twice about it. It's as the language you speak and the language you think in. The language software has to be also something that's taken for granted. And of course, keeping the web open and free. My call for action to you would be that we need to all collaborate more. All of you are thinking about multilingual web components at different layers in different organizations, and we need to collaborate more. It's just that we cannot build mobile and web language tools. We cannot actually release high-quality fonts and typing tools. We cannot develop open tools, platforms, and communities unless we collaborate. And that means it's universities, it is organizations like Wikipedia, it is organizations who are working on language technologies, whether that's Google, whether that's Facebook, whether that's different universities, and really making that happen. It's a virtuous cycle. You have to work together and collaborate in order to address the larger question of making user-generated content a reality. It's easy to say this, but it is actually collaboration that makes that work. And these are all different parts that I'd like you to again, keep in mind whenever you're working locally in your own ecosystem. Try to enable free access to content wherever you can. Make it available, because that's the best way people can consume it. Make sure that, if you have a team of mobile engineers or some passionate students, that we could build out more mobile applications to distribute and read content on the web and on mobile. You have to seed language applications. Fundamentally, if you don't seed the community, you actually cannot grow that content. And whenever you're reading Wikipedia, please tell us if you're having a problem reading any of the content on any of our pages. Again, with that, I'll leave you. I think we'll take questions later.
Yes. Well, we can take questions now.
Okay. And these are some of the other sessions where members of my team who are here, everyone, I'm very happy that we actually spent 10 days in Spain working together in the past week. And Pau Giner, David Chan, and Santosh will be presenting on translation, the new content translation platform that we are building. So it'll be very interesting to actually look at that and how we are building it, how we see some of the issues with machine translation and translation memories. And then we have 2 panels we are participating in the leader workshop. And that's all I have. If any of any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. For the question and answer time, we have about 20 minutes or so. I'd ask you, when you ask questions, to please state your name, and then I'll repeat the questions so that they're recorded by the camera, because we don't have a microphone down below at the moment. So with that, any questions? Hans?
Yeah, I have a question. So you described very nicely how, so my name is Hans Uskereit, and so you described very nicely that often the bootstrapping for new languages could be a mix of first translating from the English Wikipedia, and then filling in the language culture specific content, right? So, and this seems to be one of the very crucial points. So, for instance, Asia Online had translated for very early already, many years ago, the Thai Wikipedia, and for a short time, Thai Wikipedia was the largest in the world because it had the English plus the Thai.
Yes.
And so for a short time it was larger. But then you don't get all the edits, yeah? You don't get the communities immediately. So is there any, for this bootstrapping process, it seems so crucial, so central, that it seems that Wikipedia together with international communities should set up exactly for that some workflows, processes, how to do the transition from the bootstrapped content and then filling it in with the culture culture and language-specific content and creating user communities. Is there anything of that sort? Do we have the money for doing that, or is that...
Well, so again...
Can I just repeat the question
yes,
for the record?
please.
So very briefly, Hans's comment was on bootstrapping and the transition from translating content from English and then using local language. And one of the issues is, if you translate the content, how do you capture then the edits that come later, and suggesting there needs to be a way to handle this in a workflow developed by Wikipedia and others. Okay.
So again, we're starting to examine the complexities of the workflows in terms of being able to merge edits that are being done on different platforms coming back into our workflows, because ideally, at the end of the day, you do want the content to be available on Wikipedia as it is edited wherever else. It could be edited on Wikipedia itself. And it's very complex, as you know, as you gave the example of Asia Online. Yes, Thai had, and brief spurt of glory, for a few days, but it's just, again, that you want to have that cycle and in terms of content being merged back in. And initially, at least, in terms of content translation and what we are looking at, right now we are trying to keep the problem simple because we want to address first the creation of content, right? So fundamentally, the problem is so complex that if we don't break it down into different pieces, we actually won't be able to even address the workflows that come in when you are merging in content not only from Wikipedia edits in the future, but also from other communities that are doing this offline. Another example that to the same problem you specified is the Translators Without Borders. And they actually develop a lot of content, medical content. They translate medical content from Wikipedia's, which is very high quality, in many of the smaller languages in Africa and in Asia, and make that available locally to their communities, right? So they have a noble purpose in mind. They are creating this content. They're actually translating and investing volunteer as well as other grant money, if you will, to get that content created. But they are unable to sync that back into Wikipedia, right? We'd also love to see those translations. We'd also love to see that content showing up in languages even where we don't have those pages available. Yes, so I hope I addressed a bit of it.
You did. There's one little question leaving, and would it be a good idea to mark translated content from English, if you had to design Wikipedia from scratch, and then to let the people, the readers, see which ones have been the bootstrapped from the English, the translated, and which one has been the locally edited. Yeah?
Yes, so, and we will do that because we will tag.
That would be very, very crucial.
Yes.
Also for research.
Yes,
seeing how
absolutely.
the own content develops.
Yeah. And we absolutely plan to do that because we know very well that machine translation results are flaky at best, and we really don't want to lose that context.
Okay, I think Thierry and then Seth.
Yes, my name is Thierry Leclerc, DFKE Germany. I was wondering if the distribution of language you had for Wikipedia is similar to the one we have for Wiktionary. I would expect that it's less time consuming to generate lexical data in Wikimedia than to generate the content in so many languages. And if you have similar figures for the consumption of lexical data on Wiktionary to see how often it is used. And also if Wiktionary could be a good tool for translating the Wikipedia content or resource.
Well, believe it or not, we were having a discussion on this just yesterday. So we are very much looking at how to use the data on Wiktionary into the content translation, bootstrapping process. And unfortunately, right now, there is no API which is available which can actually cleanly provide that data from Wiktionary, even for consumption, into a platform, a tool set where we could pull it in for Wikipedia. So we are working on it. We're again looking at options, but we will actually have to do some work around that data to make it machine consumable. So I hope that addresses your question. David, you wanted to address?
Yeah, possible.
You want to answer some part of that? David is from my team, so.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, a quick point to make about Wikipedia, but also especially about Wiktionary, is that what we call the English Wikipedia actually contains a lot of content in other names and this kind of thing in other languages and a number of scripts, and that's especially true with Wiktionary as well. So if you look at an entry for an English word, there tends to be a list of translations into many other languages. And also, if you go to English Wiktionary and search for a word in Spanish, say, then that will be in there with a definition in English as well. So it's not as simple as that en.wiktionary is all English content. Thank you.
And also I wanted to add that we have another very interesting project which some of you might actually want to get involved with, which is Wikidata. The Wikidata project is actually based out of Berlin, and it is actually where we are trying to create structured data for Wikipedia. And we are again in the infancy of structuring Wikipedia data, but it's a very interesting project to follow.
Seth, did you still have a question? And then Thomas? Okay.
All right, Seth Grimes. I will pick up on the question that preceded this last one, which is translation. So I'm going to cite a problem anecdotally, which is to say that I don't have data, and I'm hoping that maybe you have some kind of data, which is I've heard anecdotally, people working on machine translation look for parallel corpora. Yeah. And anecdotally, there are plenty of Wikipedia pages that were machine translated without correction, so that if you were to use those translated pages as input to machine correction, you'd be sucking on the tailpipe, as the expression goes. You'd be eating garbage from one machine translation system in order to create another one. Yep. Can you quantify the number of uncorrected machine translated Wikipedia pages that are out there, and whether you do see it as a problem?
Well, so from the fundamental editing policies on all Wikipedias, we actually don't really prefer to have any machine translated pages at all. So as you know how the Wikipedia communities work, they will revert a page, editors will revert a page if there is machine translated garbage on a particular page. And we do care about that as a factor while considering how we actually leverage machine translation.
Do you have a mechanism for detecting that automatically?
Well, we're working on it, but yes, we are looking at a mechanism to detect abuse of content translated, machine translation again. We don't want data to be just picked up from an MT and just fed back and published back to a page. So we will look at the number of edits, for example, that actively a user has made while they're working on that suggestion, and the number of edits and the percentage. So we're kind of working on tuning that algorithm. Again, this is not production yet, so but we do keep that in mind. Yes, we will not publish and create corpora which are then consumed and not only by ourselves but by others, in terms of just having machine translation data coming back right in and being inaccurate. That's not acceptable in the high quality, rich content definition that we are trying to follow.
Okay, then Thomas.
Yes, Thomas. Thomas Carrasco, European Commission. It is quite clear that one needs some kind of computer-aided translation
and at the same time to standardize them. So now the question of getting the rubbish back, this is a very general problem with a machine translation, not only with the people from Google also have it. And one needs some kind of tags that say this is a raw machine translation and it's tagged as such. And also when a human translation was edited, say this is originally machine translation and has been was edited by a human. But by the way, I am working in something like that. We can talk later on.
Absolutely, yes, and that's a very important point to note. We do plan to make our corpuses available, our corpora available.
Roberto?
Hi, I'm Roberto Navigli from the Sapienza University of Rome. Well, could you say a few words about the general vision of the number of fantastic resources that the Wikimedia Foundation is working on? Like, you know, Wikipedia is great, but other resources like Wiktionary and also Wikidata, which seems to be, you know, interconnecting and providing structured data. I mean, they have like Wiktionary, as was already mentioned, you know, is such a big project with such a duplication of efforts, and there's no real concept of an entry like in Wikipedia. I mean, the entry in Wiktionary actually contains a number of some entries, like the sentences of a word in different languages. And when you link to the entry, you just link to the general dictionary entry and not the specific sense. So this is missing in Wiktionary, while in Wikipedia it's everybody who links and wikifies, I mean, just disambiguates automatically, implicitly or explicitly. So I was wondering whether you could say a few words about the general idea, the general vision of the Wikimedia Foundation about all this, and how maybe Wikidata could play a role in this.
So I'd say, I think all of you are familiar with the number of projects that Wikimedia has beyond just Wikipedia. So we have quite a few other projects, and these are all, again, user-generated and user-contributed too. We have a large project on images, which is Wikimedia Commons. And that's the Commons repository where images are uploaded from all over the world, and has a major impact in terms of being the back end for all the images for Wikipedias themselves. So it's the image repository which you can contribute to. It's also Creative Commons. Then we have other projects such as Wiktionary, which is open dictionary, open and free dictionary. We have WikiVoyage, which is our most recent set of new projects, which is travel-focused contributions, and we are seeing an enormous growth in WikiVoyage, specifically because it is similar to Wikipedia and has a similar structure of the pages. And then we have other projects like Wikisource and Wikiversity. So there are a whole tier of projects, and if you go to wikimediafoundation.org/projects, you should be actually able to see the whole list. About 10 projects which are running in parallel and actually user created. I mean, these are all sustained and supported by volunteer contributions. But Wikidata is actually a very, very crucial project for us. And it is because as Wikipedia has grown organically over the past decade and beyond, Wikipedia has, users have created content with templates, with, about the famous Wikipedia templates, as well as references, citation templates, and Wikitext. If you will, which has organically grown without much structure, consistency across different Wikipedias. So Wikidata is really our first attempt, if you will, to take this massive amount of user-generated content and being able to create structured information from that. Right? So it's almost like a reverse engineering project, right? You're going after a generation of content and trying to pull it into a machine, becoming machine consumable and distributable. And so Wikidata is in its infancy. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of creating and supporting structures of information. One of the popular examples I can give you is of info boxes, which are the right-hand side boxes that you see on a Wikipedia page, where you see the information about a particular topic being listed out, whether that's a person or whether that's a place or other kinds of items, and you have detail that is being listed. So that is starting to get generated from structured content, and that's the first step, right? Again, you're trying to take different components, if you will, on a Wikipedia page. It seems very easy for a human being to read, but it's very hard for a machine to consume when you start, if you don't break out all the parts that you have on a page. So as you take info boxes, that's the first step, and then we do plan to take every section off a Wikipedia page and other kinds of image information, for example, and be able to make it multilingual. That is, you submit translations for a name, and you should be able to pull that into any language and swap it through across any Wikipedia. And that's the beginnings, if you will, of being able to support that infrastructure. Again, the foundation and other collaborators, we collaborate with different organizations all the time. If you're interested in that, please let me know. I can connect you with the folks who are working on the project. But it cannot be done by one organization only. We are too small to actually do this ourselves, and at the same time, it also needs other effects. Gabriel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say something just for that. We actually now have HTML and RFA data structures for our content that expose things like template parameters.
Yeah.
So Wiktionary is a very good example for that. It has developed a very complex system of templates, which is very different in each of the Wiktionaries, as I understand it. Apparently has been taken over by linguists that have their private fights in how they should mark up things in templates. And there's a chance for maybe you to contribute something in extracting this information. We provide now a lot of the infrastructure where it's easy to work on HTML and on using RFA attributes to pull out the semantics. But we don't currently have any work ongoing to move this to Wikidata or any other similar structure, data structure. So that's an opportunity for you, I think, no matter what you do with this data, but there's a lot of data to be had. Also for translation, we will have IDs, permanent IDs on elements that lets us track content as it was translated originally, have annotations like who edited this last, blame maps, things like that, so that we can actually track this came from machine translation, was not touched afterwards. So we will be building the infrastructure for that, but there's a lot of steps between the basic content and something like Wikidata where you might be able to fill in the blanks. Thanks.
Thanks, Gabriel. And also we have grants, actually. We are giving out grants from the foundation. If you're interested in specific data content work where you're actually working with us on extraction of different kinds of data or creation of tools, there are a whole set of grants that, and proposals that the foundation considers. But again, we do operate on a fundamental value of collaboration, collaborate across with our communities as well as with anybody else who's interested.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question over here, but I see a number of other hands, so perhaps during the break the conversation can continue.
Dan to Fish. Concerning the post-editing, so do you consider that it is possible to have multiple versions of the same source document which are edited differently and probably with different quality? Do you think about trying to rank various versions of post-edited documents?
Well, today we don't do it in any organized way. That is, we don't go and rank post-edited contributions. And again, what we do look at is the quality of the article on a particular language Wikipedia. So basically our formula has been simple. our editors, which are communities of interest on different topics in Wikipedia, so kind of self-govern what a good article is and the metrics for what you define as good high-quality content. And that has worked for us on, especially on the top 10 Wikipedias, because again, there's enough critical mass in numbers to be able to make that, editing, post-editing quality or integration of edits, maintaining a specific level of quality happen. Now, how that happens in smaller languages is a different story, because again, this is completely a model driven by the level of participation, if you will, of editors and a community of interest around a specific topic. So there are, even in English, articles which are not very well written, and they're not very complete. And that happens across the board. And as you go into the smaller languages, sometimes there's stubs. There's stubs that are getting created by robots. And the bots that go and create the initial stubs in hope that somebody will come and either revert them or they will add to them. And that happens constantly. Again, that's just user behavior, right? And we are constantly trying to see if we can build tools to detect that better. Our community actually builds a lot of tools, developer community. And again, I'd like to reinforce that as you look at hundreds of languages, again, it is a very much a community driven effort, right? And that community can be composed of experts, can be composed of contributors who actually write content, who edit it, who go and curate it, who go and administer, what is high quality, and there's different levels in it. So it's a complex question.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alolita, for this presentation.